Somewhere in a forgotten corner of the world, behind the curtain of time, there lies a garden, not growing from the ground, but suspended in the sky, dreamlike and miraculous, like a divine wonder. Its name is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Some say it is the most mysterious of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Some even claim it never truly existed. Historians have debated it for centuries. Travelers long to glimpse its remnants. Poets and painters let their imaginations run wild, sketching its beauty onto pages and canvases. What we know is but a collection of fragments, scattered through ancient clay tablets, hidden in the notes of Greek scholars, like distant echoes, whispering faintly in our ears across the millennia. Ancient Babylonia, mighty and enigmatic empire, once stood proudly on the land we now call Iraq. Towers, palaces, temples, and streets gleamed under the scorching sun with the glow of stone and brick. And woven into the threads of that civilization is a tale of love, longing, and wonder unfolding slowly like a painted scroll. Close your eyes and feel the garden that vanished in the dust. Hear the wind rustling through the palm trees, the soft trickle of water flowing through elevated channels, as if the whole world is breathing gently. Now let us step together into the dream of the Hanging Gardens. Legend has it that the birth of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon was not a display of power, nor an offering to the temples of the gods. It began with the tenderness of a king, a love that crossed mountains, rivers, and kingdoms. It was the 6th century BCE. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was at its peak, and its ruler was the famed monarch, Nebuchadnezzar II. He was a great king, a conqueror who expanded his realm, transforming Babylon into one of the most renowned cities of the ancient world. But behind the glory of his conquests, there was a man deeply devoted to his wife. His queen, according to legend, was named Amidis, a princess from a land of high plateaus Media. Media, located in what is now northwestern Iran, was far from the scorching lowlands. There, mountains rose in layers, forests grew lush and green, springs flowed clear and cold, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and wild grass. But now, she lived in the heart of Babylon, a city of dust and relentless heat. The dry wind swept across vast palaces of sun-baked mud brick, and beneath her feet was no longer mossy earth, but searing, sun-cracked soil. She began to long for her homeland, for the highlands wrapped in mountains, for the gurgling streams and flowering valleys, for the blossoms that opened in the morning mist, and for the whisper of wind through the pines she once knew. Nebuchadnezzar saw the silence in her, the sorrow, a melancholy that did not belong to this land, appearing gently in her eyes and resting quietly on her brow. He could not bear it, and so he made a decision like no other. On this hot, flat plain, he would recreate her homeland. He would build her a world where, even far from home, she could return in spirit to her childhood dreams, to the place where the breeze stirred the branches of pine trees. The order was given. Craftsmen, architects, gardeners, and hydraulic engineers gathered from all directions on the grounds outside the royal palace. They began to construct a garden unlike any other, a garden that would rise from the earth toward the heavens. This was no ordinary courtyard, no simple patch of flowers or shaded lane. It was designed in terraces, layer upon layer stacked high, resembling the mountains of distant Media. Each level was filled with vegetation, flowers, vines, shrubs, small trees, even fruit trees and towering palms. Water was the soul of this garden, and its greatest challenge, they built a complex system of spiral pumps and underground pipes. Servants worked around the clock to operate the machinery, lifting water from below to the uppermost terrace, from which it would flow downward, irrigating every bed and nourishing every root. Sunlight streamed down, water trickled and sang, and between the verdant steps of this skyward garden, birds and butterflies danced through the air. It was as if a forest had taken flight and now floated in the sky. When Queen Amidis first stepped into this garden, it is said she remained silent for a long time. Then she wept, but not from sorrow. These were tears of belonging, as if she had awakened once more in her homeland, hearing the wind rustling through the pines, watching the sun climb over the silhouette of distant mountains. and Nebuchadnezzar stood beside her, saying nothing, only watching her, smiling. Thus, the Hanging Gardens were born, for love, for memory, so that a homesick woman might find peace for her soul in a foreign land. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are not only a tale of love, but a feat of extraordinary engineering, a miracle suspended in the midst of time. Even today, its existence remains shrouded in mystery. We have no complete ruins, no definitive blueprints, only fragments of ancient words scattered among myths and secondhand accounts. The Greek historian Strabo and the geographer Diodorus Siculus both describe this wonder in their writings. They spoke of a palace suspended in air, layer upon layer rising upward, a green pyramid blooming from the earth. But its steps were not made of stone. They were formed from trees, vines, and flowering plants, creating a garden world that floated above the city. From these ancient descriptions, we can begin to imagine slowly, step by step, its possible design. At its base, there were massive platforms, constructed from sturdy brick and stone. Each terrace supported layers of soil and thriving greenery, while the spaces between held hollow vaults and walkways to reduce weight and to house irrigation and drainage systems. From a distance, it might have appeared like an inverted hill, sculpted by human hands, standing quietly on the blazing plain, bursting with green in defiance of the desert. Each tier had to support the heavy weight of soil and trees, so the builders used the strongest materials available: compacted earth, baked bricks, bitumen, reeds, and clay, layer upon layer, sealed to prevent leakage, creating a man-made ecosystem where plants could thrive. Sunlight streamed from above. The garden opened on all sides, allowing air to circulate. Leaves swayed gently. Droplets of water trickled through stone channels. In the heart of a hot and noisy city, it was a sanctuary of peace and shade. But most astonishing of all was its irrigation system. According to ancient sources, the builders devised a complex network of hydraulics. Pulleys and spiral pumps were mounted on tall towers, possibly powered by human or animal-driven water wheels, lifting water from the river far below all the way to the topmost terrace. From there, gravity did the rest, letting water flow downward, feeding every layer of the garden as it descended. If such a system truly existed, it would have been one of the most advanced hydraulic engineering marvels of the ancient world. It wasn't just a set of pipes, but a complete water cycle. By day, the sun would heat the moist air, sending vapor upward, and by night, the dew would form, softly nourishing the leaves and flowers, sustaining the garden's life and lushness. This design gave the garden the illusion of breath, as if it were a living being. People could stroll through its terraces, rest in the shade, meditate in quiet corners, each level connected by stairs and pathways. From the highest points, one could gaze out over the city and the glittering ribbon of the Euphrates River. From below, one could hear the gentle whisper of water weaving through the walls. Imagine yourself walking along a soft, leafy path, sunlight filtering through the branches above, birdsong echoing among the flowering trees, and you might feel you're no longer on Earth, but in a forgotten dream. The garden may have held olive trees, figs, and myrtle, roses, lilies, and wild daisies, fragrant air, fluttering butterflies, a miniature world that blended the highlands of Media with the shrublands of Mesopotamia, all suspended in the sky. It was a masterpiece of ancient ingenuity and a silent vow, reaching upward into the heavens, blooming quietly in the depths of time. Though we may never find its exact location, nor see its outline with our own eyes, among all the wonders ever imagined, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon will always remain a living oasis in the heart of our dreams. Close your eyes. Can you imagine it? That oasis once floating above the city of Babylon, now vanished without a trace. The Hanging Gardens, a wonder that once amazed the world. Where did it go? How did it, over the span of centuries, fade quietly into the dust of time? Perhaps it was the wind, or the slow erosion of time, or simply humanity's tendency to forget that caused it to disappear, little by little, until it lived on only in words and dreams. To this day, historians remain uncertain of its location. Some believe it truly stood in the heart of Babylon, in what is now southern Iraq, somewhere near the banks of the Euphrates. But others propose a different theory. Perhaps it was never in Babylon at all, but instead in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, near present-day Mosul. In the 19th century, the British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard discovered the ruins of a grand palace in Nineveh. On its walls were reliefs depicting tiered structures, arches, lush vegetation, and flowing water. These images bore a striking resemblance to ancient descriptions of the Hanging Gardens. He even uncovered remnants of advanced irrigation systems, drainage channels, cisterns, and traces of spiral water pumps, all hinting that such a garden may have existed there, not in Babylon, but in the lands of the Assyrians. And so a deeper mystery unfolds. Could we have remembered it wrong all along? Could the legend of the Hanging Gardens be a reflection, a collage of history, shaped by Greek historians, morphed by the whispers of travelers, mistranslated, embellished, reimagined? Perhaps a real structure once stood, only to be given the shape of a dream by the hands of time and the voices of myth, and so that once thriving garden became blurred at the edge of reality and legend. It may have been devoured by flames one night, reduced to ruins in the wars of Persia or Greece, or simply collapsed through the long erosion of forgetfulness, its bricks taken away and reused as if it had never been there at all. But you know what? Even if it is long gone, even if it was only ever a misremembered tale, people still want to believe it was real. And in that uncertainty, it feels even more like a miracle. So now, as you drift slowly towards sleep, imagine that forest in the sky still exists. Perhaps it lies buried deep beneath the sands, covered by dust, slumbering in silence. Or perhaps it still stands on the other side of time, waiting to be found again. You walk through the garden, no need for a map, no need to find your way. The wind brushes gently past your ears, and the sound of water murmurs in the distance. The greenery remains lush, sunlight weaves dappled shadows through the vines, and beyond, the palace shimmers, half hidden in mist, half born of dreams. It no longer belongs to any empire, no longer fears the touch of war. It belongs to everyone who chooses to believe. To you, in this moment of dreaming, perhaps the miracle was never about whether it existed, but about whether it made us long to reach it, whether it planted in our hearts a seed of beauty and hope. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon may have disappeared from the earth, but in memory and imagination, they still bloom, still breathe, like a dream that never fades. We often say that a miracle is where reality and imagination meet. It may have truly existed, or perhaps it lives only in a quiet corner of our soul. In the story of the Hanging Gardens, did you hear the echo of your own heartbeat? Did you find a sliver of peace amid those cascading layers of green? Now, your journey is complete. You have wandered through the mist of legend and history, climbed suspended steps, followed the echo of flowing water. You've brushed the leaves with your fingers, breathed in the scent of blossoms, and heard time whispering from the treetops. And in this moment, you may gently close your eyes and let your own hanging garden slowly appear. There are no kings here, no need for bricks or irrigation systems. It belongs to no dynasty, but rather, it is a tender presence, a quiet longing that blooms deep within your heart. Perhaps it hides in a childhood memory, a grove where you once lay watching clouds drift by. Perhaps it's from a dream you barely remember, a bridge covered in flowering vines, with lanterns in the distance, and your breath soft and steady nearby. A miracle doesn't have to be vast or grand or impossible. Sometimes it's just a feeling, a moment of calm, a fleeting breath of trust, and the beauty that still lingers even when the world grows quiet. So imagine this. Somewhere in a hidden corner of the world, you plant a garden. No stone, no soil is needed, just your thought, just your quiet breath. The vines grow from your heart, twisting through your memories, climbing the walls of your dreaming mind, and blooming into flowers you thought you'd forgotten. They sway gently in the breeze, glistening silver under the moonlight, as if whispering, "Good night." So, dear listener, you don't need to know whether the Hanging Gardens ever truly existed. You don't need to chase ruins buried beneath desert sands, as long as within you, you're still willing to pause for a dream, and still willing to believe that somewhere there was once a garden built for love and peace, then it has never truly disappeared. Close your eyes. You're already there. Beneath your feet, warm stone paths. Above you, arches woven with leaves and flowers. Around you, the soft murmur of water and the hum of night insects. And you are walking slowly toward the heart of the garden, toward the core of the dream. Here, there is no noise, no war, no weight of time. Only you and your inner stillness, like a drop of water, falling gently into an eternal lake. Now, let your thoughts drift away and let this garden guide you into sleep. No rush. Everything is just right. Good night, and may you meet the Hanging Gardens again, somewhere in your dreams.